Welcome to Boring Stories, your quiet place for slow, sleepy history. Tonight, we begin a new journey, one of silence, sorrow, and survival. So, if you're already drifting off, let the war march without you. But if you're still here, tell us in the comments, what would you miss most if you were a soldier in 1862? Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. Now, close your eyes. Let the boots tread without sound. And let's begin. You wake with dirt in your teeth again. Not because you were eating it, though that wouldn't surprise you anymore. But because sometime during the night, your head tilted and rested against the cold, rutted earth, your cheek pressed into the same dust you've marched through for days. It's still dark, and the ground is wet with yesterday's rain. There's a quiet between the bugle's last breath and the groans of waking men, and in that space, your body remembers every blister, every ache, every swollen joint that the morning will demand you forget. Your right boot is soaked through. The left one is worse. One of your toes might be bleeding again. You're too tired to check. You shift slightly, trying not to wake the boy next to you, though he isn't sleeping, just lying with his eyes open, lips parted, like maybe he died sometime before dawn and didn't think to tell anyone. You don't know his name. He only joined the company last week. Another boy. Another pair of boots. Another pair of lungs trying not to breathe too loudly in the cold. Someone coughs. That deep, ragged kind of cough that tastes like copper and winter. Maybe it's Sims. Maybe it's the Irish lad who never stopped humming when he marched. You don't turn to look. Names don't last long out here. They fall off like buttons in blood. The bugle call has come and gone, and the road is waiting. The road is always waiting. Your rifle is already in your lap, as if it crept there in your sleep. You check the sling, the ramrod, the lock. You do it out of habit, not necessity. If you need to fire it today, it means something's gone wrong. Something always goes wrong. You sling it over your shoulder, stretch your arms, feel your ribs shift under a coat that hasn't been dry since the river crossing 3 days ago. The captain rides past on a clean horse with polished boots, his coat unwrinkled, his gloves still white at the cuffs. He doesn't look at you. He never does. You're not real to him. None of you are. You're a row on a manifest, a tick in someone's ledger, a set of shoulders to carry a pack and a musket from one field to another. He doesn't speak. That would require acknowledging you. You rise. Slowly. Stiffly. Your knees crack. Your spine protests. The pack on your back feels heavier than it did yesterday, and you wonder again what you packed that you can't seem to throw away. Maybe it's the small wooden comb your mother gave you before you left. Maybe it's the letter you wrote to your sister, folded 3 times with the dried clover inside. A letter you never finished, never sent, never could bring yourself to part with. She wouldn't recognize you now. Not with your sunken cheeks, your blistered lips, the crust of old blood behind your ear from last week's scrape with that fence post during the storm. The column begins to move. Boots on mud. Packs creaking like ship hulls. No one speaks, not this early, not anymore. The morning is too sacred for words. It belongs to bone and breath, to the endless rhythm of marching towards somewhere you'd rather not reach. You count your steps without meaning to. 47, 48, 49. You stop counting at 60. You always do. Anything more than that feels like hope. You wonder what day it is. You stopped knowing after that last skirmish near the hill with the burnout church. Was that 3 days ago? 5? Time doesn't hold here. Only the march does. The road stretches ahead, always a little wet, a little uphill, never familiar. It leads forward because going back isn't allowed, and standing still is impossible. The boy beside you coughs again. He wipes his mouth. There's red on his knuckles. You don't ask. You don't offer anything. What would you even say? That it gets easier? That the pain becomes background noise? That if he's lucky, he won't remember what it was like to feel warm? Ahead, the horizon is barely lightening, and still the march continues. The sky doesn't care if you arrive or not. The birds aren't singing yet. The world hasn't decided to wake. But you're already moving. Because that's all there is. One foot. Then the other. One breath. Then another. One more mile into the silence. Because the march never ends. You're sitting on a log that's soft with rot and slick with moss. Your knee the only desk you have. A half-wet scrap of paper curled at the edges beneath your trembling hand. The ink bottle is nearly empty, or maybe it just thickened in the cold, and each time you dip your pen, it scrapes like a bone across the surface. The nib catches, the words blur, and the rain finds its way beneath your collar, as if even the sky wants to read over your shoulder. You write anyway. Slowly. Letters too faint to matter. You're not even sure who the letter is for this time. Maybe your mother, though you haven't heard from her since autumn. Maybe your sister, whose address you never learned. Or maybe no one. Maybe the letter is for your hands, just something to keep them moving, something to keep you from folding in on yourself and falling into the cold like the others did last winter, quiet and stiff beneath a thin blanket of snow. You tried to start with the weather, because that's safe. It always rains here, or it threatens to. The clouds hang like damp laundry stretched across a gray ceiling. The mud never dries. The food is always gone too quickly, and the coffee never gets hot enough to matter. You write that you're well, which is a lie, but an easy one. You say the men are in good spirits, another lie. No one sings anymore. Not since the last push through that ravine where Sims lost his foot and the boy who always carried extra candles vanished behind a tree and never returned. You don't mention the lice, or the coughing, or the men who sleep with eyes half open. You don't mention that the bread is mostly mold now, or that the captain stopped speaking to anyone after the lieutenant took a bullet to the neck and bled into the officer's tent for 6 long hours. You don't write about the dreams either, the ones where you're back home, but no one recognizes you, and your voice doesn't work when you try to explain. The ink smears. Your fingers cramp. You pause to rub your wrist, pressing the tendons until they stop twitching. The paper is already softening, the way paper does just before it dissolves, and you know you won't be able to fold it once it's done. It will tear in your pocket, soak through with sweat, and eventually become part of the lining. Like the last 3. Like the one you meant to give to the courier, but the courier never came. Or maybe he did, and the sergeant forgot to tell you. Or maybe your name isn't on any list anymore. Maybe you stopped existing somewhere between the river crossing and the burned village with the charred cradle and the street. You wonder if letters ever arrive. You haven't seen anyone get one in weeks. The last man who did cried when he read it, but he wouldn't say why. He just folded it over and over until it disappeared into a pouch he wore around his neck, and 2 days later, he stepped on a trap that tore his leg open to the bone. He didn't cry then. Just looked down like he expected it. Like the letter had warned him. Or cursed him. Or maybe just reminded him that there were still things out there worth hurting for. You go back to the page. Try again. You write your name at the bottom, though you don't know if anyone reading it would know the name anymore. You haven't spoken it out loud in so long it feels like it belongs to someone else. You fold the page. It does tear, just a little, and you slip it into the same pocket as the others. You don't seal it. What would be the point? There's no mailbag. No flag. No wagon. Only more road, more mud, more days stacked like stones in your back. And then the bugle sounds again. 3 short notes. Time to move. You shoulder your pack, feel the damp weight settle against your spine, and you fall into the line without a word. No one speaks anymore during the first half mile. That's when the cold lives deepest in the bones, and the body is too busy remembering how to be alive. You wonder if someone back home still checks the porch every morning. You wonder if your letters sit in a drawer unopened, or if they were lost before they left the camp, or burned by accident, like everything else. You walk forward, one step, then another. The pocket grows heavier with every mile, full of words that never mattered, letters that never arrived. You see him from across the camp just after dawn, standing so still you'd think he was carved there by the night. He's holding his rifle upright like it's a walking stick or a grave marker, one end sunken into the mud and the other gripped too tightly for calm. The fog hasn't yet lifted from the lower ground, and through it, he looks smaller than he did the day before, swallowed by the gray. He's staring at something. You already know what it is before you get close. The air has that weight to it, thick, sour, full of blood and smoke and something worse, the kind of stillness that always settles over a fresh corpse, like the world itself is holding its breath out of shame. You don't speak when you reach him. His eyes don't flick to meet yours. He doesn't flinch when your boots squelch beside his. He's not crying. Not yet. Just frozen. Mouth parted. Shoulders tense. The boy with no beard. 16, maybe. 17 if you lie to yourself. The dead man is lying half in a ditch, half out of it. Face pale, throat open, one boot missing. He's not from your unit. Uniform's wrong. But he's fresh, not stiff yet, just empty. Steam curls up from his clothes like morning mist from a field. His fingers are still curled around nothing. Maybe he died reaching for help, or holding a weapon that's already been taken. The boy hasn't moved in minutes, maybe hours. Could have been here all night for all you know. The guards don't notice anymore. Everyone's stretched too thin to care where a new recruit wanders after supper. You don't ask him what happened. You know. It's the first one. The first time you see death as a person, not just an idea. Not just a number shouted in the dark after the smoke clears. No, this is different. This is the first time you realize the skin doesn't stay warm. That mouths don't close on their own. That the body, even still, feels heavier in the air than a whole living man. He still hasn't blinked. You watch his throat work, dry and uneven, like he's trying to swallow something sharp. You remember this moment in your own bones, how your stomach turned cold before your head caught up, how you couldn't breathe properly for days afterward. You remember the stink, the awful human smell of something gone wrong in the most final way, and how it never fully left your nose. You remember how your sergeant slapped the back of your head and told you to stop looking unless you planned to start digging. But no one does that to him now. Everyone's too tired for discipline, too tired for mercy. So you stay beside him. Just a figure in the mist. Another body that hasn't fallen yet. That's all any of you are anymore. Premonitions of grief in motion. Eventually his lips move. He was looking at me, the boy whispers. You nod, even though the dead man's eyes are turned toward the trees. Doesn't matter. It always feels that way. Like they know. Like they follow you. Like some part of them refuses to let you walk away untouched. I thought he was alive, the boy says. I thought, but he doesn't finish. The thought dies in his mouth the way it always does. You don't answer. You know there's nothing that makes it easier. The first one latches on. It stays. It grows inside your memory like a root system, branching into everything else. You think of home, and he's there. You taste bread, and you remember what his tongue looked like, pale and swollen. You wake up 5 years from now and he'll still be staring at you from a ditch that no longer exists. The boy finally lowers his rifle, and you hear the way his arm trembles as it relaxes. His knuckles have gone white from holding it. He looks at you now, not for answers, but just to check if you're still real. If you're made of the same stuff as he is. You nod again. Not for him, for both of you. A silent contract. You won't tell anyone. You won't shame him. You'll let him grieve in this small, strange way. A piece of him is being carved away right now, and there's no rushing that process. The war takes chunks of you like that. Not with guns, not with shrapnel, but with quiet moments like this, when your soul sits too close to your skin and something reaches through and pulls it loose. By the time the stretcher team comes around, the boy has already walked off. His boots leave small, clumsy prints behind him, too close together, like he's not sure how to move anymore. You don't follow. He needs to disappear for a while. Maybe he'll sit by the latrine trench and cry. Maybe he'll dig a hole with no purpose. Maybe he'll lie down in his tent and dream of someone alive. Doesn't matter. What matters is that he came face to face with death and didn't scream. Didn't run. He stood his ground, and something inside him shattered quietly, like thin glass under slow pressure. He'll never be 16 again, not in the way he was yesterday. You light a cigarette once the medics lift the body and roll it onto the tarp. The flame flickers against the gray morning. You hold it steady, even as the cold wind starts to rise. You think of your first time again. Not the blood or the smell, you've forgotten those details. What you remember is the silence. The kind of silence that settles not in the ears, but in the bones. The kind of silence you never quite lose, no matter how many names you forget. That's what you share with the boy now. That silence. That terrible, heavy understanding. The cold seeps into your bones, relentless and unforgiving, as night cloaks the camp in an oppressive blanket of shadow. Around you, the tired murmurs of men settle into a heavy silence, punctuated only by the occasional scrape of leather boots against mud and the distant crackle of a dying fire. It feels like the world itself is holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. Then, softly, almost hesitantly, a voice breaks the silence. It is rough and cracked, but it carries through the darkness like a fragile thread woven from hope and desperation. Someone begins to sing an old hymn, a song that has survived generations of sorrow and struggle. The words come slowly at first, uncertain, but soon others join in, a trembling chorus rising from the cold earth itself. Their voices blend in a fragile harmony, weaving warmth into the freezing night. You close your eyes, letting the melody wash over you, filling the void that the war has carved into your soul. The hymn speaks of home, of peace that feels like a dream, of lives untouched by the relentless march of death. For a moment, the horrors of the day fade into the background, replaced by a sense of unity, a fragile hope kindled in the dark. You want to join, to add your voice, but the lump in your throat chokes you. Instead, you clutch your rifle tighter, feeling the rough wood bite into your palm, grounding you in this fleeting moment of peace. Suddenly, the world erupts. The earth beneath you shudders violently, and the sky is torn apart by a thunderous roar. The hymn is swallowed whole, the voices stifled in an instant as the deafening explosion rips through the camp like a savage beast. Your ears ring with the blast, and the acrid taste of smoke and dust fills your mouth. Time fractures, seconds stretch and snap with cruel intensity. Your body instinctively drops to the ground, heart hammering wildly as mud and debris shower down upon you. You taste blood on your lips, and your hands scrape against cold, wet earth as you struggle to orient yourself. The fire is extinguished in a sudden puff of smoke, and the night is filled with the panicked cries of men thrown into chaos. You look to the tent beside you. It is torn apart, the canvas shredded and billowing like a wounded flag. Your neighbor lies beneath the wreckage, still as the grave. His breath has stopped, and the silence of death presses down on your chest harder than the mud. You don't scream. There is no place for screams anymore. You close your eyes, swallowing the bile rising in your throat, and force yourself to breathe. Around you, men scramble and shout, the fragile order of the camp shattered. Some move with desperate urgency to aid the wounded, while others simply stand frozen, eyes wide with shock and disbelief. The night has become a living nightmare, and you are trapped in its grasp. The shelling continues, relentless, unyielding, tearing the darkness apart with savage light and sound. Each explosion drives you deeper into the mud, into the cold, into the endless ache of survival. Yet somewhere, beyond the chaos, a voice rises again, tentative and trembling. Someone begins to sing once more, a single, defiant hymn, a fragile promise that even in the heart of hell, humanity refuses to be extinguished. You try to focus on that voice, that fragile thread of hope, as the world crumbles around you. You hold on to it like a lifeline, because without it, you fear you will drown in the silence left behind by the fallen. The psalm carries you through the longest hours of the night, weaving a tapestry of sorrow and strength, of loss and unbroken spirit. And when dawn finally breaks, pale and weary, you find yourself still alive, still breathing, still listening to the echoes of a song that refused to die. The mud is everywhere, thick, unrelenting, a living beast that drags you down with every step. It is not just dirt or soil, it is a suffocating, cold abyss that wraps around your boots, soaks through your socks, and seeps into your skin until it feels like it has become a part of you, an enemy within that you cannot fight. For weeks, you have trudged through this endless mire, your feet trapped in the suffocating embrace of wet earth that never dries, never lets go. Your boots, once proud and solid, are now nothing more than waterlogged prisons. Each step is agony, the constant pressure of cold, filthy mud pressing against your toes, squeezing and crushing until the pain blurs into numbness. Your skin, pale and frostbitten, begins to blacken in patches, the early signs of gangrene creeping silently across your flesh. The smell of rot and decay lingers in the air around you and under your nails, a sickening reminder that this battlefield kills not only with guns and shells, but also with neglect and nature's cruel indifference. You stare down at your feet, swollen and grotesque, barely able to move your toes. Your body trembles with exhaustion and cold, and yet the mud clings, refusing to release you. You know the stories whispered in the trenches, of men who lost their feet, who had to be amputated right there in the mud, without anesthetic, without hope. The thought chills you even more than the freezing wind that slices through your thin uniform. But the war does not stop for pain, for sickness, or for the slow death of frostbite. The voice of the commander pierces through the fog of misery like a cold blade. "Forward!" he orders, his tone merciless and commanding, leaving no space for argument or hesitation. It is a word weighted with the expectation of sacrifice and the urgency of battle. You force yourself to your feet, every muscle screaming in protest. The mud resists, clutching your legs as if trying to drag you back into its dark, suffocating depths. Your heart pounds with a mixture of fear, pain, and a strange stubborn hope. You take the first step, and then another. The heavy boots sink into the sludge with a sickening squelch, each movement a battle against the earth itself. Around you, your comrades struggle with the same invisible foe. Faces are drawn and pale, eyes hollow from weeks of cold, sleepless nights, and endless fear. Some lean on each other, struggling to stand upright as the mud pulls them down. Others collapse, unable to move, swallowed whole by the quagmire of war. Yet all of you answer the command, forward. There is no retreat here, only the grinding march deeper into hell. the cold bites relentlessly. Your soaked clothes cling to your skin like a second layer of ice, chilling you to the bone. Fingers stiffen and lose feeling, but the battle with the mud is far worse. The relentless moisture, the filth, and the pressure have become a poison, creeping into your blood and sapping your strength. You realize the enemy is no longer just the shells raining from above or the bullets cutting through the air. The mud itself is an assassin, silent and slow, breaking men down piece by piece. You remember the warnings, cases of trench foot, gangrene, infections that no doctor can heal in these conditions. You think of the men who cried out in pain as their toes blackened and died. You try not to look at your own feet, afraid of what you might see in the fading light. The pain is a dull roar beneath your skin, a constant companion that no sleep or prayer can quiet. But still you move. Step by excruciating step, you follow the command that leaves no room for weakness. The mud drags and clings, the cold burns and numbs, but the war demands you go forward. You push yourself past the boundaries of pain and fear, your mind locked on the single goal that echoes in your ears: survive. To survive another day, another hour, another breath. The landscape around you is a wasteland, craters filled with stagnant water, broken trees stripped bare, the skeletal remains of what was once a vibrant forest. The sky is a heavy, oppressive gray, blending seamlessly into the mud that covers everything. You stumble through this desolation, surrounded by the groans and curses of men caught in the same nightmare. Each moment drags endlessly, yet it passes too quickly. The relentless push forward is like a cruel dance with death, where every misstep could mean sinking forever, becoming part of the mud you so desperately fight against. Your mind wanders briefly to home, to warmth, to the life that once was. But those thoughts are slippery and distant, like a fading dream slipping through your fingers. Your body aches, your spirit falters, but the command drives you onward. You grit your teeth, drawing on a reserve of strength you didn't know you had. The war is not only fought with bullets, it is fought with the slow, grinding agony of mud in your blood, frostbite in your toes, and the unyielding will to live. And as you trudge forward into the endless night, the mud clings tighter than ever, but so does your resolve. You are part of this hell now, a man forged by pain and perseverance, struggling against the darkness that threatens to swallow you whole. You wake before dawn, the cold seeping into your bones like a slow poison. The mud clings to your clothes, thick and unyielding, mixing with the stale sweat of a restless night. The trench is silent except for the occasional rustling of men shifting in the dark, the faint sound of whispered prayers or quiet sobs swallowed by the heavy, oppressive air. You pull your coat tighter, trying to shield yourself from the damp chill that seems to sink deeper with every breath. The morning light creeps weakly through the low-hanging clouds, casting a dull, gray pallor over everything. The earth around you is torn and battered, scarred by the relentless bombardment that never seems to cease. Barbed wire snakes through the mud, a cruel reminder of the traps laid for any soul foolish enough to venture beyond these fragile walls. In the distance, you hear the low rumble of artillery, each boom a grim heartbeat echoing through the wasteland. From somewhere near, the unmistakable clatter of ration tins being opened breaks the silence. You follow the sound with tired eyes, watching as your comrades unwrap their meager breakfast, strips of salted pork, dense and tough, with the unmistakable scent of preserved meat mingling with the lingering, bitter smell of gunpowder that permeates everything here. Your stomach twists at the thought, but hunger claws relentlessly within you, sharper than any fear. You unwrap your own portion, fingers numb and stiff, and bring the small piece of pork to your lips. The taste is harsh, too salty, too dry, the coarse texture scraping the inside of your mouth. But beneath that is something worse, a bitter undertone that you recognize instantly, the faint but unmistakable trace of powder, the residue of countless battles that have soaked into the very food meant to keep you alive. It is the taste that haunts you, a reminder that even sustenance here is soaked in war. Around you, men sit silently, their faces pale and drawn. Some chew mechanically, their eyes vacant and unfocused, others stare into the distance, lost in memories or despair. The camaraderie that once lifted spirits has been worn down by weeks of bloodshed and misery, replaced by a grim determination to survive one more day. The air is thick with unspoken fears and the weight of countless losses. You notice the dark stains on some faces, mud, blood, or worse, and the fresh bandages wrapped tightly around hands and arms. The smell of decay is never far away, a rotten corpse buried too shallowly, a festering wound untreated. It clings to the trench like a cruel shadow, a constant reminder of the fragility of life in this place. You swallow hard, trying to force down the bitter taste and the knot of dread tightening in your chest. Your mind drifts back to home, the warmth of a kitchen, the smell of fresh bread and roasting meat, the laughter of loved ones. But those memories feel like a distant dream, a world away from the mud and powder and death that surround you now. Here, there is only the endless grind of survival, each day a battle not just against the enemy, but against the creeping despair that threatens to swallow you whole. The trench walls shudder as another shell lands nearby, sending a shower of mud and debris into the air. You flinch, heart pounding, muscles tensing for the inevitable call to arms. But for now, the moment holds, fragile and fleeting. You take another bite, forcing yourself to eat despite the nausea rising in your throat. The salted pork is your only armor against starvation, the bitter taste a shield against the cold and the fear. You hear a whispered hymn, a fragile thread of song in the darkness, carried on the damp morning air. It is a prayer, a plea for mercy, a desperate grasp for hope in a world gone mad. The voices join quietly, harmonizing in the gloom, before being cut short by the sudden roar of another explosion. The song dies, just like the breath of the man lying motionless beside you. The smell of powder and pork fills your senses, an unyielding presence that binds you to this place and this war. It is the taste of survival, of sacrifice, of a world forever changed by violence. You close your eyes, steeling yourself for what lies ahead, knowing that tomorrow will bring the same struggle, the same hunger, the same endless fight. For now you eat, because to do anything else is to surrender. The cold bites into your skin the moment you step into the river's edge, the icy water lapping at your boots like a living thing eager to swallow you whole. The sky above is leaden, the pale light struggling to penetrate the heavy, rain-soaked clouds. You clutch the bundle of letters close to your chest, the only fragile tether you have to the world beyond this endless nightmare. Each word penned on those pages is a lifeline, a whisper from home, a fragment of hope, a promise that someone still remembers you. The river roars in your ears, a relentless, merciless force that seems to mock your every step. Your breath comes in shallow gasps, the cold stealing the warmth from your lungs, your fingers trembling as they tighten their grip on the soggy bundle. The mud beneath your feet shifts treacherously, sucking at your boots as if the earth itself is trying to pull you down. You hesitate, heart pounding, the shadow of fear creeping into your mind. What if you lose everything here? What if the river claims more than just your boots and clothes? You take a step forward. The water rushes over your knees, freezing and wild. Your teeth chatter uncontrollably as you press on, each movement a battle against the fierce current. Around you, the soldiers move silently, faces etched with the same fear and determination. Some carry their weapons high above the water, others clutch personal effects tightly, unwilling to let go of the last scraps of normalcy in this shattered world. Suddenly, a cry breaks the tense silence, a sharp, terrified gasp as one of your comrades slips beneath the surface. You turn just in time to see him struggle, arms flailing desperately against the icy grip of the river. The water swallows him quickly, pulling him under with brutal efficiency. Your heart seizes as you reach out, but there is nothing to grab, only the swirling, merciless current that takes him away from sight. The river doesn't discriminate, it devours everything: letters, memories, lives. You watch helplessly as the ripples erase the last traces of your friend, the water closing over him like a tomb. A heavy silence falls over the group, broken only by the rush of the river and the distant thunder of guns. The loss is raw, immediate, a cruel reminder of how fragile life is in this place. You wipe the cold spray from your face and press on, the weight of grief and fear pressing down like the sky above. The letters in your hands feel heavier now, soaked through and barely legible, but you refuse to let them go. They are all that remain of the world you once knew, and you clutch them fiercely as the river drags you forward into the unknown. The crossing is a nightmare etched into your memory, a moment when the earth itself seemed to rise against you, cold and unyielding. You feel the water pulling at your legs, the mud trying to trap you forever, and the faces of fallen comrades flashing in your mind. But somehow, you reach the other side, trembling and soaked, but alive. You collapse onto the bank, gasping for breath, the river still roaring behind you. The letters are ruined, the words blurred and smeared beyond recognition. But you press them to your chest anyway, a silent vow that you will carry these fragments of hope through whatever hell lies ahead. The river may eat everything, but it cannot swallow your will to survive. The night descends slowly, like an invisible curtain being drawn over the world, wrapping the battlefield in an oppressive darkness so thick it seems to smother every sound and thought. You find yourself standing alone at the edge of the trench, a narrow scar dug deep into the cold, sodden earth, a fragile barrier between you and the wilderness beyond, a place where death lingers like a stalking beast. The sky overhead is a churn of heavy, brooding clouds, the kind that promise rain but deliver only a bitter chill that seeps into your bones. Your breath escapes in white puffs, brief ghosts in the frozen air, and your fingers, stiff and trembling, clutch the worn wooden stock of your rifle as though it might somehow anchor you to reality itself. Behind you, the camp is silent except for the occasional soft murmur of restless men trying to catch sleep in these impossible conditions. The mud-soaked ground squelches beneath your boots, and the only illumination comes from small fire pits scattered here and there, embers glowing faintly like dying stars struggling against the vast blackness. The flames cast flickering shadows that dance along the sandbagged walls of the trench, distorting familiar shapes into monstrous forms. For a moment, you catch yourself gripping your coat tighter, the damp fabric sticking cold and clammy against your skin. The cold is relentless, but it is nothing compared to the weight pressing on your chest, the burden of fear, exhaustion, and the memories you carry. It is your watch tonight. The responsibility falls on you to be the eyes and ears for the sleeping men, to keep the fragile line between life and death intact for just a few more hours. The rifle in your hands is heavy, a constant reminder that the enemy is never far. You scan the darkness, every shadow a potential threat, every rustle in the underbrush a warning. Your mind races with 1,000 thoughts, worries about the next attack, the faces of comrades lost, the letters you'll never send, the family you left behind. But the night brings something else too, something deeper and more unsettling. Suddenly, your gaze fixes on a figure standing just beyond the trench, among the shattered trees and tangled undergrowth. A soldier's silhouette, soaked in mud and blood, frozen in a pose that seems almost unnatural. His uniform is tattered, his posture weary but rigid. His eyes, empty and hollow, meet yours across the void between life and death. Your heart pounds so loudly you are sure it will betray you to whatever lurks beyond. You blink hard, and the figure fades, swallowed by the night like a bad dream evaporating at dawn. But the chill remains, an icy finger trailing down your spine. You shake your head, trying to dispel the vision. It must be exhaustion playing tricks, the mind's desperate attempt to conjure something, anything, to break the unbearable silence. But even as you tell yourself this, a creeping sensation settles in your gut, the undeniable presence of something unseen, something watching. The whispers begin then, faint and almost too soft to hear. A voice riding the cold wind, carrying fragments of forgotten conversations, half-remembered prayers, and broken promises. The wind seems to carry the echoes of the dead, voices threading through the night like fragile threads of smoke. You turn slowly, heart hammering, searching the darkness with wild eyes. The firelight flickers, and in its uncertain glow, you swear you see more figures, dozens of shadowy forms emerging from the mist, the faces of fallen comrades and strangers alike, their eyes reflecting sorrow, rage, and eternal watchfulness. Their mouths open, but no sound escapes. Their presence is a silent indictment of the horrors you have witnessed and the horrors yet to come. You press your back against the trench wall, feeling the rough wood bite into your skin through the damp fabric of your coat. Your rifle feels heavier now, as if the weight of those ghosts rests on your shoulders as well. Memories flood your mind, vivid flashes of lost friends and lost battles. You remember the boy with no beard, eyes wide in shock as he saw death for the first time. You recall the last letter you wrote, the words smudged by rain and tears, never reaching the hands it was meant for. The smell of powder and pork, the cruel lullaby of this endless war. All of it mixes with the night around you, a bitter symphony you cannot escape. Minutes stretch into hours. The cold bites deeper. Your eyelids grow heavy, but sleep remains elusive. Instead, you find yourself trapped in a waking nightmare, caught between the living and the dead. The voices rise and fall like waves, murmuring secrets only the night knows. You whisper your own prayers into the dark, hoping someone, something, is listening. The river of time flows relentlessly forward, indifferent to your pain, your fear, your desperate hope for dawn. You are not alone in this vigil. Somewhere, in the distance, a lone bird calls, a mournful sound that echoes like a ghost's lament. You grip your rifle tighter and scan the blackened woods once more, the shadows flickering and dancing, threatening to consume you whole. The line between reality and nightmare blurs, and you wonder if the ghosts you see are your own mind's creation, or if perhaps the dead truly walk among the living in this forsaken place. Hours drag on, heavy and slow. The first pale light of dawn teases the horizon, promising an end to the night but not to the suffering. You are weary beyond words, your body screaming for rest, but you remain rooted to your post. The ghosts fade with the rising sun, but their presence lingers in your heart, a reminder that in this war, death is never far, and peace is only a fragile dream. You lower your rifle slowly, exhale a breath you didn't know you were holding, and step back into the trench. The world is waking, but the nightmare is far from over. The early morning fog clings to the earth like a shroud, swallowing shapes and sound, blurring the edges of everything around you. It's a thick, damp silence that presses against your skin and seeps into your lungs with every breath. The world feels muted, as if it's holding its breath in the moments before some terrible revelation. You stand amidst the scattered remnants of camp, the cold dampness sinking deep into your bones, your clothes heavy with sweat and mud that refuses to dry in this endless grayness. The soldiers around you move quietly, faces drawn tight with exhaustion and fear, eyes that have seen too much for a lifetime. The camp is a ghost of what it once was, filled with shadows and memories that weigh heavier than the equipment strapped to your back. But your attention is fixed on the horse, the colonel's horse, a massive beast. Proud and powerful, yet frozen in place, stubborn as a stone rooted deep in the mud. Its flanks heave with shallow, rapid breaths, nostrils flaring as it snorts nervously into the thick fog. The animal's dark eyes, wide and wild, dart anxiously into the haze, reflecting fear you never thought possible in such a noble creature. No urging, no whip, no shouted command can make it budge. It stands there, immovable and defiant, a silent monument to despair. You glance at the colonel, tall, rigid, the very image of command despite the fatigue lining his face. His usual confidence is cracked, and for a moment you glimpse the fragile man behind the uniform. His jaw is clenched tight, fingers curling around the reins like iron chains. The tension in the air is palpable as he rides toward the horse, voice low but sharp as a knife. "Move, damn you!" The words break the silence, harsh and desperate. But the horse remains still, anchored by some invisible force neither of you can fight. Around you, the men exchange uneasy glances. The horse is more than just an animal, it's a symbol, a living extension of the colonel's authority, strength, and the fragile command structure holding this fractured unit together. Yet here it is, broken, terrified, refusing to obey. You think of all the men you've seen broken in this war, minds shattered, bodies wounded, and realize the horse shares the same fate. The colonel dismounts, heavy boots sinking slightly into the soft, muddy earth. He circles the horse slowly, his gloved hand running over the slick, trembling coat, whispering words you cannot hear, prayers, promises, apologies. You watch, unable to look away, feeling the silence stretch between you like a vast canyon. The horse snorts once, shudders, and then stills, a fragile hope fading in the cold morning air. Suddenly, the colonel pulls a revolver from his belt. The cold metal gleams dully in the dim light, stark and unforgiving. His hand trembles for a fraction of a second before raising the weapon. You see the struggle in his eyes, between mercy and duty, grief and resolve. And then the shot rings out, cracking the heavy silence like a thunderclap. It echoes through the fog, reverberating against the empty trees and swallowed hills. The horse rears briefly, a terrible, heart-wrenching sound escaping its throat, a mournful cry that seems to tear through your soul, before it collapses onto the ground, lifeless. A heavy weight settles over the men. Some avert their eyes, others stand frozen, haunted by the cruel necessity of this act. The colonel's face tightens, jaw locked so hard it looks as if it might fracture under the strain. No tears fall. There are no words spoken. Only the cold acceptance that survival demands harsh sacrifices, that the world you once knew has crumbled into this endless night of mud, blood, and broken spirits. You feel the chill settle deeper in your chest, heavier than the weight of your pack, colder than the damp wind that bites through your clothes. The horse was more than a beast. It was a symbol of command, of hope, of a future that now feels more distant than ever. And now it is gone. You wonder if the colonel's heart breaks with it. Slowly, you mount your own weary horse. The animal trembles beneath you, but it moves, alive for now. The column begins to move forward, grinding through the mud like a slow, relentless machine. The thick fog swallows your footsteps and the muffled sounds of the march. You hear only your own breath, ragged and cold. The weight of the morning's grim act presses on your mind, gnawing at the edges of your resolve. Ahead lies uncertainty, more mud, more blood, more death. You try not to think about what comes next, about the endless grinding of this war. There is no turning back. The horse's lifeless body will be left behind in the mud, a silent witness to the cruelty of this place, a memory carved into the landscape and into your heart. The colonel rides ahead, distant and solitary against the pale, gray horizon. You catch the faint glint of his sword, lowered now, the glimmer of a man who carries invisible scars as deep as your own. You grip your reins tighter and look straight ahead, swallowing the lump in your throat. The war moves on, relentless, unforgiving, eternal. And so you ride. The fog swallows you whole, but you keep moving forward, carrying the silent witness of a fallen horse in your heart, a stark reminder that nothing here moves unless it is broken first. The forest stretches before you like the remnants of a broken world, an endless expanse of splintered branches, crushed leaves, and twisted roots, tangled together in chaotic disarray. The sunlight barely pierces the dense canopy above, filtering down as thin shafts of pale light that do little to warm the damp, cold earth beneath your boots. Each step sinks deep into the mud, sticky and heavy, soaked with rain and the thick scent of blood that clings to everything. The acrid smoke of gunpowder and burning wood lingers in the air, blending with the faint metallic tang that stabs at your nostrils. The forest, once a place of life and serenity, now feels like a graveyard, a silent witness to the carnage that has swept through here like a merciless storm. Your eyes, weary and sharp despite the exhaustion clawing at your bones, catch sight of something half buried in the muck. You kneel slowly, your fingers trembling as you brush away the darkened soil and clinging debris. What you find is a fragment of worn leather, cracked and torn, soaked through with rain and stained dark with grime and something far more sinister. It's part of a shoe, a small, battered piece of what once was a man's soul, now just a fragile remnant lying forgotten amid the ruin. The edges are ragged, bits of thread and tattered fabric still clinging on, as if desperate to hold together the last vestige of the life it once protected. As your gaze drifts just beyond the shoe, your breath catches in your throat. There, tangled among broken twigs and shards of splintered wood, lies a small, bloody fragment of flesh, pale, bruised, and lifeless. The grim reality strikes you with unbearable force. This is no mere scrap of clothing or equipment. This is a piece of a man, ripped away in the chaotic fury of battle, left to rot here, silent and abandoned. In that moment, your mind flashes back to Thomas from Illinois, the boy who joined your company just months ago, barely 16, with a boyish grin that never quite reached his eyes. You remember the way he proudly showed you a worn locket, its faded photograph of a woman, his mother, tucked close to his heart. Thomas, the one who laughed too loudly in the barracks, who nervously touched his chin where a beard refused to grow. Was this his shoe? Was this his flesh? You don't know. The war has a cruel way of stealing names and faces, erasing stories until all that remains are these fragments scattered across the battlefield like broken promises. Your fingers close around the leather tightly, the rough texture biting into your palm as if demanding you to hold on, to remember. The pain in your heart is sharp, a dull throb that spreads through your chest and settles deep in your gut. You swallow the bile rising in your throat, forcing down the nausea that threatens to overwhelm you. The battlefield is a place where hope goes to die, where young boys become ghosts, and men are reduced to nothing more than memories and torn pieces of fabric. The forest around you seems to hold its breath, the heavy silence broken only by the distant thud of artillery and the low murmur of voices, some shouting orders, others crying out in pain. Every sound echoes through the trees like a cruel reminder that death is never far, that the line between life and oblivion is thinner here than anywhere else. The air is thick with the smell of pine mingled with gunpowder and decay, a bitter cocktail that seeps into your skin and lingers in your dreams. You rise slowly, the weight of loss pressing down on your shoulders heavier than the pack strapped to your back. Each piece of a man left behind is a story unfinished, a future stolen by the relentless march of war. You tuck the fragment of shoe into your pocket, a silent vow whispered in the stillness, to remember those who cannot speak for themselves, to carry their broken pieces with you as a testament to their sacrifice. The battlefield is unforgiving, but memory is your weapon against the erasure of life and love. You take a deep breath, the cold air burning your lungs, and tighten your grip on your rifle. Ahead, the forest waits, dark and watchful, ready to swallow you whole if you falter. The battle is far from over. You know the war will grind on, relentless and merciless, crushing men beneath its wheels like fragile insects. But as long as you carry these fragments of the fallen with you, these pieces of shoe and pieces of man, you will fight on. Not just for survival, but for the stories that deserve to be told, for the faces that deserve to be remembered, for the lives that war tried to erase. The forest swallows you once more, but in your heart burns a stubborn flame, a flame of remembrance, defiance, and a fierce, aching humanity that refuses to be broken. You watch him from a distance, standing just beyond the swirling chaos of mud, smoke, and shattered trees. The officer moves with a grace that seems almost unreal in this ravaged landscape. His uniform is immaculate, a crisp, sharp cut tailored perfectly, each button gleaming faintly even under the heavy gray sky. The fine leather gloves covering his hands catch the pale light, polished smooth, untouched by the filth and blood that stain the world around him. His every motion is precise, deliberate, controlled, a sharp contrast to the desperate struggle for survival that consumes you and the men around you. Those gloves, so clean and perfect, are like a barrier between him and the grim reality of the battlefield. You can't help but stare, fixated on those gloves. They symbolize everything you are not, untouched, protected, distant from the nightmare that clutches your soul. The contrast is stark. Your own hands are raw and cracked, fingers numb from the cold and trembling from fatigue. They grip your rifle with a desperate hope, stained with the grime of blood, sweat, and endless mud. Your nails are jagged, your skin chafed, and your palms slick with dirt and fear. Yet the officer's gloves remain pristine, unblemished by the horrors he commands. They seem like a shield, an invisible wall that separates the horrors he orders from the calm surface he presents. His gaze scans the lines of soldiers, eyes sharp and cold, but there is something behind that steely look, a burden that no uniform can hide. You sense the quiet weight pressing down on him, the heavy responsibility for lives that hang by a fragile thread. His fear is not like yours. It is not the raw, primal terror that grips your heart when shells explode nearby, or the bone-deep exhaustion that saps your will. His fear is measured, contained behind a mask of discipline and authority, a silent torment he carries beneath the smooth leather of his gloves. You wonder how many times those gloves have touched the bloodied hands of wounded men, how many orders have passed through those fingers, commands that sent young boys like you marching toward death. You imagine the countless faces behind those orders, the echoes of screams and prayers that linger in the night. Does he ever feel the weight of those moments, or has the war hardened him beyond reach? The gloves protect his hands, yes, but can they protect his soul from the scars the war leaves deep inside? The cold wind blows, rustling the leaves and carrying the faint scent of smoke and decay. You shiver despite your thick coat, your teeth clenched as you try to steady your trembling fingers. The officer's gloves seem like a symbol of everything that divides you. The officer and the soldier, the command and the sacrifice, the untouched and the broken. Yet, beneath that divide, you know both of you share a fragile thread of fear and hope, a desperate clinging to survival in a world gone mad. You watch as he approaches another group of men, speaking sharply but calmly, issuing orders that ripple through the ranks like a cold wave. His gloves flex with each gesture, movements so precise they almost seem rehearsed. You imagine those hands never shaking, never faltering, even as the ground trembles beneath artillery fire, and the cries of the wounded fill the air. But you also imagine the nights, long and dark, when those gloves lie folded on a table, and the officer's hands are bare and trembling in the solitude of his tent. Your own hands ache, the pain a dull throb beneath the skin, but you refuse to let the fear take hold. You clutch your rifle tighter, drawing strength from the shared struggle with the men around you. The war does not discriminate between fine gloves and cracked skin, between command and sacrifice. It consumes all, leaving only the raw fragments of humanity behind. The officer turns and glances your way for a fleeting moment, his eyes meeting yours through the haze of smoke. There is no malice, no disdain, only the silent recognition of two souls trapped in the same nightmare, each carrying burdens that no one else can see. Then, with a final nod, he moves on, the leather gloves gleaming once more before disappearing into the mist. You take a deep breath, the cold air burning your lungs, and remind yourself that the war will not break you. The officer's gloves may be clean, but your hands are the ones that will fight, bleed, and endure. And in this brutal, merciless world, endurance is the only victory you can claim. You tuck the image of those gloves deep inside your mind, a symbol of what divides and what binds all of you caught in the endless grind of war. As the rain begins to fall again, heavy and unrelenting, you step forward, your boots sinking into the mud once more. The battle is far from over, but you will face it with hands cracked and bleeding, heart pounding with the fierce stubbornness of the living. The thunder of cannon fire has finally ebbed, leaving an eerie, almost unnatural silence to smother the battlefield. For what feels like an eternity, the earth beneath you had been trembling violently, shaking off fragments of shattered trees and torn flesh alike, each explosive blast sending waves of destruction rippling across the scarred landscape. Now, all that remains is a heavy, suffocating stillness, the silence after the storm, so dense it feels like it might crush you with its weight. You lie there, your body pressed deep into the cold, muddy earth, every muscle aching, your skin slick with grime and sweat. The acrid scent of gunpowder clings to the air, mingling with the metallic tang of blood and the wet decay of churned-up soil. Your ears ring with the faint echoes of the last salvo, yet the silence is overwhelming, a roar louder than any cannon, an oppressive void that threatens to swallow all hope whole. Around you, the battlefield stretches like a grotesque graveyard. Fallen comrades lie scattered in grotesque stillness, their faces frozen mid-scream, or in grim acceptance. You see the empty sockets where eyes once stared in terror, hands clenched in futile defiance, boots torn and soaked with mud and blood. The silence amplifies every breath, every faint rustle, every distant groan from the wounded who cling desperately to life. That sound, a broken, ragged plea, slices through the quiet like a knife, and you catch your breath, torn between the urge to crawl to them and the paralyzing weight of exhaustion that roots you to the ground. The war is no longer a distant thunder. It is here, in your bones, in your shaking hands, in the rapid pounding of your heart that refuses to slow even now. Your thoughts spiral into memories, brief flickers of your life before the war, faces of those you left behind, letters never sent, promises that will remain unfulfilled. The contrast between that world and this nightmare is unbearable. Your mind recalls the relentless moments before the silence, the deafening blasts, the fiery explosions ripping apart the night, the desperate orders shouted over the chaos, and the primal scream that escaped your own lips as you dove for cover. You remember the faces of your comrades, some resolute, some terrified, all bound together in this shared ordeal. And now, here in this pause, the raw weight of survival presses down on you, a grim reminder that living in this hell is no victory at all. The silence is a cruel trick. It is not peace, but a pause filled with anticipation. It is the breath held too long, the space where fear festers unchecked. Your heart races, blood pounding in your ears, and every instinct screams that the next blast is coming, that the nightmare is far from over. You force yourself to slow your breathing, to quiet the trembling of your limbs, but the silence wraps around you like a suffocating shroud, seeping into your very soul. In this moment, your thoughts drift to those you left behind, the family you might never see again, the friends who might never return. You curse the war for stealing the future you had imagined, for ripping apart the fragile threads of hope and love. The silence seems to mock you, echoing with all the things unsaid, all the dreams crushed beneath the endless march of violence. Yet even in this hollow quiet, a strange clarity emerges. The war has stripped away illusions, leaving raw, brutal truth exposed. You are no longer just a boy or a man. You are a soldier forged by fire, marked by the scars both visible and hidden. The silence cannot shield you from the memories or the pain. It only forces you to face them with cold, unblinking eyes. Minutes stretch into hours as darkness deepens and stars struggle to pierce the smoke-filled sky. You remain awake, trapped in this liminal space between chaos and calm, life and death. The silence after campfire is a merciless companion, unforgiving, relentless. But you endure it, because surrender is not an option. Because even in silence, the war rages on inside you. Your breath forms clouds in the icy air, and despite the chill, sweat slicks your brow. You stare up at the sky, at the faint glimmer of distant stars obscured by smoke and clouds. Somewhere out there, far beyond this desolation, life continues. Children laugh, rivers flow, the world spins on, oblivious to the hell that has swallowed you whole. The thought is both a comfort and a curse. You know the fighting will resume soon. The silence is but a brief lull before the next storm of fire and death. You tighten your grip on your rifle, willing your trembling hands to steady. Your legs ache from the cold mud, your ribs burn with every shallow breath, but you refuse to let despair claim you. You will rise again, you will fight again, because the alternative is unthinkable. And so you wait, alone with your thoughts, in the silence after campfire, the silence that screams the loudest. You stumble upon the remains of a farm long ravaged by fire, the blackened skeletons of trees standing like mournful sentinels against a gray, heavy sky. The ground beneath your boots is cracked and scorched, littered with ash and charred fragments of wood. The air carries a sharp, bitter scent, a mingling of smoke and something faintly sweet, haunting and unforgiving. Amid the ruin, your eyes catch on something unexpected, a few apples, hanging stubbornly from twisted, burned branches. Their skins are blistered and blackened, their flesh sour and bitter to the taste. Yet, despite everything, you reach out and take one. You bite into the fruit, the sharp tang of burned earth and smoke mingling with the faint sweetness of the apples. Your mouth puckers at the acidity, but hunger drives you onward. This is not the orchard of your childhood dreams, nor the fertile land of promise. It is a bitter reminder of everything lost, everything destroyed by the merciless tide of war. Yet you eat, because you must. Each bite is a bitter lesson in survival, a harsh taste of reality that clings to your tongue like the memory of those you've left behind. You think of the farmers who once tended this land, who once laughed and loved beneath the boughs now blackened and broken. Their lives, like these trees, have been scorched by the fire of conflict, reduced to smoldering remnants. And still, life pushes through the ashes, stubborn and unyielding, just as you do. The sourness of the apples is a reminder that not all sustenance brings comfort. Sometimes survival demands endurance of bitterness, of hardship, of pain. The orchard, though burned, offers a fragile hope, a promise that even in destruction, there can be nourishment. You swallow the apple, your throat dry and burning, and press onward through the silent, scorched fields. Around you, the wind whispers through the dead branches, carrying echoes of a life that once was. You listen closely, searching for any sign of movement, any glimpse of life amidst the devastation. But the orchard remains still, a frozen monument to loss and resilience. Your fingers brush over the rough bark, blackened and cracked, and you wonder how much longer this land can endure the ravages of war. You think of your own endurance, your own will to survive amid a world so violently changed. Like these apples from a burned orchard, you bear the scars of fire and loss, yet you persist. Hunger gnaws at your insides, a relentless companion in this harsh new reality. The sour fruit may not satisfy, but it fuels you, pushing you forward through the endless struggle. As you gather what little you can carry and move on, the orchard fades behind you, a place of pain and perseverance, where even burned fruit carries the bitter taste of survival. You lie stretched across the cold, uneven floorboards of a battered church, the rough wood pressing harshly into your bruised and broken body. Faint shards of pale light filter through the shattered stained glass windows, casting fractured rainbows on the cracked stone walls and shattered pews. The once majestic sanctuary has been scarred by war. Soot blackens the altar, candles stand melted and abandoned, and dust hangs heavy in the air like a suffocating shroud. Yet, in this ruined sanctuary, there's a strange stillness that blankets the chaos outside, a fragile bubble of calm where life and death hover in fragile balance. Near your side, a woman, a local village healer, perhaps, or a reluctant volunteer pulled from the ranks of terrified civilians, sits in quiet vigil. Her hands are steady but trembling beneath the flickering candlelight, stained faintly with the blood of others she has tried to save. Her face is pale, etched with exhaustion, yet her eyes shine with quiet determination and a flicker of compassion that cuts through the heavy gloom. She says little, offering no promises, only the gentle rustle of fabric as she prepares needle and thread to close the gaping wound in your side. The air smells of damp stone, old incense, and something coppery, the metallic tang of blood. Your breath comes ragged and shallow, each inhale a knife's edge of pain stabbing deep into your ribs. The wound pulses beneath your torn clothing. Warm blood seeps steadily, a dark reminder of how close you came to death's cold grasp. Outside, the distant thunder of artillery rumbles faintly, a cruel soundtrack to this moment of fragile sanctuary. The war is never far, its reach inescapable even here, within these hallowed walls. As the woman begins her work, her hands move with painstaking precision. Each thread pulls tight through torn flesh and muscle, sending sharp jolts of agony through your body that make you grit your teeth and bite back a cry. You focus on the sound of her breathing, slow and steady, a metronome guiding you through the unbearable pain. She does not flinch at the mess of blood or the ragged edges of your injury. To her, this is all too familiar, just another body to mend, another fragile life to patch together with thread and hope. Your mind drifts unbidden to memories that seem impossibly distant now. You see the faces of comrades lost in the mud and blood, friends whose laughter once filled the air but now haunt your dreams as silent shadows. You remember the screams, the chaos, the unrelenting terror of battle. You remember the cold, the numbness in your fingers as you lay helpless in the muck. And you remember the unexpected kindness of strangers, this woman, her soft prayers, her steady hands, the faint light of faith she offers in a world so drenched in darkness. Time stretches and blurs. Minutes or hours pass. It is impossible to tell. The pain sharpens and dulls in waves, a cruel tide threatening to sweep you away, yet you cling to consciousness. The woman hums a quiet hymn, her voice trembling but unwavering, a fragile thread of humanity woven into the silence. Around you, the church seems to hold its breath, the ghosts of prayers past hanging like a fragile shield against the storm outside. The last stitch is pulled tight, the needle withdrawn with a soft sigh. Your side feels raw and exposed, a burning ache that anchors you to the present. Your vision swims as exhaustion and relief fight for dominance. The woman presses a clean cloth to your wound, whispering a blessing you barely hear. Outside, the gunfire continues, relentless and indifferent, but here in this ruined sanctuary, for a few fleeting moments, there is peace. You think of the countless others who have suffered in places like this, soldiers and civilians alike, torn from their homes, bound by pain and survival. You wonder how many more will pass through these broken doors, how many more lives will be stitched back together with trembling hands and fading hope. You close your eyes, the colors from the shattered glass swirling behind your lids like fractured dreams. You breathe, shallow and ragged, and you survive. Because to live is to endure, through pain, through loss, through the bitter taste of war that lingers long after the last shot is fired. You lie in your cot, the threadbare blanket barely covering your shivering body. The chill of the night seeps through the thin fabric, crawling into your bones as the distant sounds of artillery echo faintly in the background. Your body aches in every joint, bruises throb with dull pain, and your mind is fogged by exhaustion, fatigue that no amount of rest can fully erase. Yet, as your eyes close, the heavy weight of sleep finally drags you under, and you slip away from the harshness of the waking world. But what comes is not peace. Instead, you find yourself drifting into a strange, fragmented dreamscape, an unreal place where faces and memories mingle in confusing waves, where the lines between past and present blur, and where the familiar becomes foreign. You see a woman. She is gentle, delicate in her movements, as if every gesture carries a weight of unspoken care. Her smile is soft and warm, lighting her tired eyes with a glow of quiet strength. The way she moves, brushing your hair gently away from your sweaty brow, whispering words you cannot quite catch, all of it feels suffused with a tenderness you have never experienced, a kindness you never believed would touch you. You try to reach out to her, to call her name, but your voice is swallowed by the thick silence that surrounds you. You realize with a hollow ache that you have never known this woman. You have never shared your days or nights with her. You are alone in this vast, violent world, and yet this dream, this fragile, fleeting vision, plants a seed of something you never thought possible. Hope. Longing. The yearning for home, for warmth, for a hand to hold in the darkness. Around you, the dreamscape shifts and fractures. Faces emerge and dissolve like ghosts, your comrades who died in the mud, their laughter and screams haunting your memory. The villagers who once offered smiles and cautious kindness, strangers you barely noticed but now appear vivid and urgent in the swirling haze. Your own reflection flickers, distorted and unfamiliar, as if war has twisted your very soul into something unrecognizable. You strain to make sense of the chaos, but the images slip through your grasp like smoke. The dream swells like a rising tide, overwhelming you with waves of emotion, fear, sorrow, loneliness, and a desperate hunger for connection. You reach for the woman again, but she slips away, her face dissolving into the shadows. Then, suddenly you wake. Heart pounding in your chest, sweat slick on your skin, breath ragged and shallow. The cold dawn creeps through the broken windowpane, brushing your face with the first light of a world that feels just as harsh and unforgiving as before. The dream was not yours, a borrowed fragment of someone else's life, a phantom of a world you have lost or never known. But its ghost lingers in your mind, a fragile flicker of warmth in the endless cold night of war. You wonder if, in your desperation, your mind conjured this dream to shield you from the brutal reality, if clutching at such illusions is, in itself, a form of survival. Because sometimes, to endure, you must believe in the impossible. In kindness where there is none, in hope where there is despair, in a future where life might be more than just pain and loss. As you lie there, the distant sound of gunfire rolls across the fields once more, a relentless reminder that the war rages on outside this fragile bubble of silence. Yet within you, something has shifted, a fragile ember of something like peace, or at least the will to keep going. You close your eyes again, willing the memory of that gentle smile to stay with you through the coming night, because tomorrow, you will need every shred of hope you can find to face whatever horrors lie ahead. The village is swallowed in a pale, trembling mist that clings to the earth like a ghost refusing to leave. Morning is slow to break, and the cold air seeps through every crack and crevice of the shattered buildings around you. You stand in the shadowed doorway of a ruined barn, the rough grain of the wooden frame biting into your palm as you lean forward, watching the scene unfold. The world feels heavy and quiet, as if it is holding its breath, waiting for the next blow. Not far from you, a small group of children slips cautiously between stacks of coarse, canvas sacks piled haphazardly against the crumbling walls. Their feet are bare and muddied, their movements furtive and wary. You can see the fear mixed with desperate hope in their wide eyes, shining bright against the dullness of their surroundings. These are not just children playing, they are scavengers, learning far too young how to survive in a place where death and hunger are constant companions. You know exactly what they're after: the gunpowder. Black and grainy, it is the powder that can turn a pile of scrap metal into a weapon of destruction, the spark that fires the cannons and rifles tearing through this land. The sacks are heavy, and the powder inside is dangerous, capable of wiping out entire families with a single careless spark. Yet here, left unattended amid the chaos of war, it has become a commodity, a precious resource that the desperate steal in the hope of trading it for something more basic: a crust of bread, a scrap of salted meat, a momentary reprieve from gnawing hunger. Your heart tightens as you watch the children grasp handfuls of the black dust, their fingers stained with soot and dirt. They do not fully understand the cost of what they take, the lives lost, the destruction wrought, but they know it is valuable. They know it might buy them another day, another breath, in a world that offers so little. From the cracked window of a nearby ruined house, a woman's sharp gaze watches you. Her face is lined with exhaustion and worry, but her eyes burn with fierce protectiveness. She is their mother. She watches every move, her body tense as she clutches the ragged coat wrapped around her thin frame. Her lips press into a thin line, a silent rebuke aimed at you, at your uniform, your boots, your very presence here. You are a soldier, a part of the war machine that has torn this village apart, and in her eyes, you are as much a threat as the bullets and shells that fall from the sky. You feel the weight of her stare press down on you, colder and sharper than the wind biting through your clothes. Yet there is something else there too, a flicker of understanding, a reluctant acknowledgement that you are not the enemy she imagines, but perhaps another soul caught in the same merciless storm. You pull a small bundle of dry, cracked biscuits from your pack, rough and tasteless but precious in this place. Your voice is soft and steady as you call the children over, offering them the meager food. They hesitate, torn between suspicion and hunger, but eventually approach, taking the biscuits with trembling hands. For a moment, their fear seems to ease, replaced by a fragile flicker of trust. The mother's eyes never leave you. Her lips move in silent prayer or warning, you cannot tell which, as she pulls the children close, wrapping them in her thin coat. You see the fear etched deep into her face, the fierce desire to protect what little remains of her family from the merciless world beyond these walls. You know this is not your war. Not really. It is theirs, the villagers, the children, the mothers who bear the brunt of destruction and loss. But you are here, part of the force that has turned this peaceful place into a battlefield, and you cannot escape the weight of that reality. Watching the children slip away into the fog, clutching the stolen gunpowder and your meager gifts, you feel a hollow ache inside. This stolen moment of kindness is a fragile thread, barely holding together the fraying edges of humanity in a world consumed by violence. The gunpowder lies heavy in its sacks, a grim reminder of the power to kill and destroy that humankind wields so carelessly. Yet here, in the midst of ruin and fear, you glimpse a different kind of strength, the stubborn will to survive, to protect, to cling to whatever scraps of hope and kindness remain. You tuck the last crumbs of your biscuits into your pocket, eyes lingering on the retreating figures of the children, and whisper a silent prayer that they will live to see another day. Because in this endless war, every small act of mercy, every stolen moment of peace, is a victory worth fighting for. The morning stretches before you, heavy and thick with silence, as if the very air itself is weighed down by the countless sorrows and fears that cling to this shattered place. The world feels suspended, caught in a moment between what has been and what is yet to come. You stand among the men, each one a shadow of himself, pale, hollow-eyed, and worn beyond words. The exhaustion in their faces is not just physical, It is carved from the memories of bloodshed, the loss of friends whose names haunt your every thought, and the unrelenting dread that today might be the day the darkness swallows you whole. The camp around you is unnervingly still. No clatter of armor, no chatter of voices breaking the heavy air. Only the soft rustle of tattered canvas tents, and the faintest creak of wood struggling against the weight of grief. Above you, the flag hangs limp and lifeless on its pole, a tattered remnant of a once proud symbol. The fabric droops heavily, weighed down by dew and despair, motionless in a morning where even the wind seems to have abandoned its watch. You stare at that flag, and a cold shiver runs down your spine. It is not just a piece of cloth. It is the emblem of everything you once believed in, everything you fought for, and everything you have lost. Its silence echoes the silence in your heart, a void where hope used to live. The flag with no wind is a cruel metaphor for your own spirit, as worn and battered as the men gathered around you. It reminds you painfully that sometimes even the strongest symbols can be drained of meaning, reduced to mere shadows in the face of relentless despair. Your commander steps forward, his figure tall yet somehow diminished by the weight he carries. His face is a map of suffering, lines etched deep from sleepless nights and the burden of command. When he speaks, his voice cracks and trembles, struggling to rise above the thick fog of fear that has settled like a shroud over the men. His words are meant to rally, to ignite the courage that still flickers beneath the surface. But they fall heavy and flat, swallowed by the oppressive silence. Around you, the soldiers exchange uneasy glances. Some bow their heads in silent prayer, others bite their lips to hold back the sobs that threaten to escape. The men shuffle their feet, restless and uncertain, caught in the suffocating grip of dread that no speech can undo. They want reassurance, a promise that they will survive this day, but deep down, everyone knows that such promises are as fragile as the limp fabric above. Your gaze falls to the ground beneath your feet, cracked earth darkened by mud, stained by the blood of battles past. You remember the faces of those who once stood here beside you, comrades who fell, their names whispered in the quiet moments before sleep. The hollow space their absence has left within your soul aches with a pain that no words can heal. There is no glory here, only the brutal truth of war. It is a game of chance where survival is never guaranteed, and death waits patiently in the shadows. Then, almost imperceptibly, a cold breeze stirs the air. It barely lifts the flag, causing it to flutter faintly against the pole. That subtle movement, so small and fragile, feels like a spark in the darkness, a faint, trembling thread of hope weaving its way through the heavy fog. You straighten your shoulders, the cold metal of your rifle steady and sure in your hands, anchoring you to this moment of fragile resolve. Beyond the camp lies the battlefield, an expanse of uncertainty, chaos, and death. You do not know what awaits you there, only that the fight is far from over. For now, you stand shoulder to shoulder with men bound by more than duty, by fear, courage, and a silent understanding forged in the crucible of shared suffering. The flag may hang motionless, the wind may have died down, but the fire within you has not been extinguished. In this stillness, beneath the sky that refuses to breathe, you find the quiet strength to carry on. The fight, your fight, is not over yet. The earth beneath your knees is scorched and broken, blackened by fire and scarred by the fury of the guns that roared just hours ago. Each breath you draw is heavy with the bitter sting of smoke and the metallic bite of blood lingering in the air. The scent is suffocating, a grim reminder that the battle here is not over, even though the cannons have fallen silent for now. Around you, the men work silently, their faces pale, etched with exhaustion and sorrow, their movements slow but determined. You grasp the handle of your shovel tightly, feeling the rough wood splinter beneath your calloused hands. The ground is unforgiving, thick with ash, tangled roots, and the remnants of what was once a peaceful field. The soil is hot, still warm from the recent fire, and a faint smoke curls around your fingers as you scrape away at the hard earth. Frustration wells inside you when your shovel snaps suddenly, and you are forced to drop it with a harsh curse swallowed in your throat. There is no time to lament broken tools or aching muscles. Without hesitation, you plunge your hands into the dirt, cold and gritty beneath your fingernails, your fingers scraping desperately to clear a shallow grave. The rough earth bites and scratches, but you ignore the pain. This is the only way to give the fallen some shred of dignity, some final rest in the cruel wake of violence. Each handful of soil feels like a small battle won against the relentless desolation surrounding you. You think of the men whose bodies you are burying, young faces twisted in shock, old comrades whose laughter once filled the camp, strangers who fought and fell beside you. The sounds around you are muted, the scrape of shovels, the occasional broken sob muffled against the thick silence that has settled like a shroud over the field. Men exchange no words. None want to break the fragile veil of grief hanging between them. You can feel the weight of loss pressing down on every soul here, heavier than the packs on your back, heavier than the cold that seeps into your bones. The battlefield has swallowed more than just bodies. It has swallowed hope, replaced it with a hollow ache that no amount of time will heal. Your fingers strike something hard, a piece of shattered wood, a broken rifle, the final remnant of a life violently ended. You pull back sharply, your heart pounding in your chest, the cold dread crawling over your skin like a living thing. For a moment, the faces of the dead flash before your eyes, and you feel the weight of their silence. This is no place for heroes or glory. This is the raw, brutal aftermath of war, the relentless task of burying the dead while the ground still smokes, while the wounds of the earth are still fresh and bleeding. Around you, others work with the same grim determination. Their bodies move on autopilot, driven by an instinct older than reason itself. No one talks, but every man knows what the others are thinking. They think of families left waiting, of letters that will never be sent, of futures stolen by a cruel fate. The field seems endless, a vast graveyard for dreams and promises broken by the roar of cannons and the flash of gunfire. The sky above is a pale, muted gray, reflecting the hollow emptiness that gnaws at your insides. The cold wind carries whispers of what was, laughter, shouted orders, desperate prayers, now all silence beneath layers of dirt and ash. Yet, amid the desolation, something stubborn flickers inside you, a fragile ember of remembrance, a quiet vow to honor those who can no longer speak for themselves. You dig deeper, your hands raw and trembling, driven by a need to do something, anything, to wrest meaning from the chaos. The earth swallows the bodies, the memories, the pain, but it cannot bury the resolve that still binds you to this forsaken place. You are here, alive, bearing witness. And though the ground still smokes, and the weight of loss threatens to crush you, you will keep digging. The night has fallen thick and heavy, smothering the camp in a blanket woven of smoke, shadows, and whispered fears. Around the flickering campfire, the faces of your comrades emerge and fade like fragile phantoms, caught between the darkness and the uncertain glow. Their eyes, sunken and haunted, reflect the orange and red flames that leap and dance, casting long, wavering shadows across their weary features. The air clings heavy with the bitter acrid scent of burning wood, mingled with the pungent, lingering tang of whiskey, cheap, harsh, but enough to dull the sharp edges of your exhaustion and sorrow. You sit slightly apart, a rough wooden stump beneath you, clutching the battered bottle pressed tightly to your lips. The liquid burns fiercely as it slides down your throat, igniting a momentary fire inside you that pushes back the chill of fatigue and the cold gnawing at your bones. Each swallow is a fragile anchor to the present, a brief respite from the relentless memories that claw at your mind in the quiet moments between the cries and explosions. Around you, the ragged chorus of voices weaves a tapestry of sorrow and defiance. Some sing in shaky tones, their voices cracking under the weight of grief. Others whisper prayers or mutter curses, clinging to fragments of hope or bitter rage. All sing to survive this endless night, this liminal space between despair and the faintest glimmers of dawn. Beyond the fire's glow, thorny bushes scrape against your hands as you reach for dry wood, their cruel spines tearing tiny rips in your skin. Blood beads in the scratches, but you barely feel the pain. Numbness has claimed you long ago, dulling every wound except the deepest ones carved by months of relentless misery. Each thorn's bite is a sharp reminder that you are still alive, still trapped in this merciless landscape, still fighting to hold on to something human amidst the devastation. Your fingers, raw and bleeding, clutch broken branches and brittle twigs, the rustling sounds weaving seamlessly with the crackling fire and the distant murmurs of the men around you. The campfire throws long, flickering shadows that twist and stretch like restless spirits on the canvas of the tents. Faces lean closer into the warmth, faces lined with exhaustion, loss, and haunted memories. Their eyes are glassy and distant, glazed over by the haze of whiskey and smoke, reflecting unspoken stories and grief too heavy to voice. You stare into the dancing flames, searching desperately for meaning or solace in their chaotic flicker, but all you find is the bitter, unyielding truth. This war is a slow-burning fire that consumes everything in its path, lives, hopes, and souls alike. Tonight, like every other night, you are caught in its relentless grasp, suspended between the raw pain of loss and the fragile flicker of survival. You lift the bottle again, feeling the rough glass burn your fingers. Another swallow, sharper now, harsher, but grounding you in the brutal reality that surrounds you. The ragged singing continues, voices rising and falling like a broken lullaby, a strange comfort in the darkness. The loneliness weighs down on you, thick and suffocating, heavier than the cold night air pressing against your skin. Yet in this shared suffering, in the flickering firelight and the presence of men bound together by loss, you find a fleeting shard of peace, a fragile ember that refuses to be snuffed out. Tonight the thorns draw blood, but they cannot break you. Tonight the fire burns, searing scars into your flesh and soul, but your will to endure blazes brighter still. You sit there, in the quiet roar of survival, a solitary figure carved from smoke and ash, waiting for the dawn to come and light the path forward once again. And when morning finally creeps over the horizon, spilling pale light across the shattered earth, you will still be here, battered, bruised, but unbowed. Part 21. The Eyes of the Enemy. The morning haze drapes the battlefield in a thick, suffocating shroud, dulling colors and muting distant sounds that ripple through the cold air. Gunfire echoes faintly, like the dying heartbeat of a land torn apart by endless conflict. Your hands, roughened by months of toil and hardship, tremble subtly as you help gather the prisoners, broken, defeated men whose faces are pale with exhaustion, hunger, and fear. Among the haggard crowd, one figure stands apart, a boy barely older than yourself, his eyes wide, haunted, and searching. He looks for something familiar in the faces around him, in the harsh and unfamiliar world he's suddenly thrust into. His gaze settles on you. There is no hatred there, only desperate fear and a silent plea for mercy. His lips are cracked and dry, trembling as he tries to speak, but words fail him. Instead, he begs without sound for something only a simple gesture can offer: water. A small act of kindness in a world that has been cruel beyond imagining. You hesitate, the weight of years spent in this brutal war pressing heavily on your conscience, memories of comrades lost, and your own scars flickering in your mind. But compassion, however faint, stirs deep within you. Slowly, you reach into your worn pack and pull out the battered canteen, its metal cold against your skin. You press the canteen into his trembling hands. He drinks greedily, desperation fueling each swallow as if the liquid could wash away the horrors etched deep in his soul. You watch silently, feeling a strange, unfamiliar warmth bloom in your chest amidst the relentless cold that war has spread through every part of your being. No words pass between you. The war has stolen more than just lives. It has stolen the language of kindness and compassion, leaving only quiet gestures and broken glances in its wake. As he drinks, his wide eyes remain fixed on you, and in them you glimpse a reflection of your own pain and fear, a mirror image of what you might have been, or might still be beneath the grime and grit of this endless conflict. There is a fragile flicker of humanity in that gaze, something raw and unbroken despite the devastation all around. The prisoner's eyes search yours for a long moment, silent questions hanging in the heavy air. The divide between us and them, so often drawn in blood and bullets, seems to blur, almost vanish. In those eyes, you see not an enemy, but a fellow human being caught in the merciless tide of war, struggling to survive and hold on to the shards of dignity left to him. Around you, the other prisoners shuffle forward, weighed down by chains of fear and uncertainty. Each carries a story you cannot hear, tales of loss, pain, shattered dreams. You know this fragile moment will soon be swallowed again by suspicion and cruelty, by the brutal realities of captivity. But for now, in this quiet exchange, there is a strange sanctity, a brief, fragile truce between broken souls who share the same desperate hope for survival. You lower your eyes, your heart heavy with a mixture of sorrow and empathy. The canteen is empty now, but the weight of that gaze lingers long after the last drop has passed. The war rages on around you, relentless and unforgiving, yet in that fleeting moment, you hold on to a sliver of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest depths of conflict, the eyes of the enemy can reveal a shared humanity, a silent plea for peace that words cannot express. You turn away slowly, the sounds of the camp returning with sudden clarity. The boy's gaze remains etched in your mind, a haunting memory to carry with you through the endless nights ahead. Though the war continues to carve its cruel path through lives and landscapes. That brief encounter becomes a beacon in the darkness, a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit, even when surrounded by despair. The bitter cold of dawn settles into your bones like a vice, each breath a ghostly plume vanishing into the gray morning air. Around you, the camp stirs slowly, a fragile murmur of movement beneath a sky heavy with the threat of rain. You sit by the dying embers of the fire, hands clenched tightly around the rusted metal of your canteen, seeking some warmth, some comfort in the unyielding chill. The commander's voice breaks the quiet, firm but weary as he addresses the men gathered before him. "One more week," he says, his words cutting through the fog like a blade. "Then this will be over. Then we go home." A wave of murmurs sweeps through the crowd, some hopeful, some doubtful, most too exhausted to react. You hear the promise and feel its weight, heavy with hope, yet burdened by the bitter taste of countless broken vows whispered in the same words, spoken again and again through the endless months of war. You want to believe him. You need to believe him. But years of shattered dreams have hollowed out your hope, leaving a cavern of cold fear where certainty once lived. How many times have you heard these same words? How many times have you clung to the fragile thread of hope only to watch it snap under the relentless pressure of reality? The war has become a beast that devours promises, replacing them with smoke, blood, and endless nights filled with the screams of the fallen. Your fingers tighten around the canteen as your gaze drifts to the faces around you, men whose eyes tell stories of loss deeper than words can express. Some are silent, staring into the mud as if searching for answers in the earth itself. Others mutter prayers, barely audible, casting words to the wind in desperate hope that some higher power might intervene. A few curse softly, bitterness burning in their throats like acid. The weight of your gear presses down upon your shoulders, not just physically, but like a constant reminder of the burden you carry, the memories of friends lost, the fear of what tomorrow might bring, the endless fatigue that saps your will. Every step you take feels heavier than the last, as though the very earth conspires to slow you down, to trap you in this nightmare that refuses to end. Yet the commander's words echo again in your mind, fragile and haunting. 1 more week! It is a mantra, a lifeline thrown to men adrift in a sea of despair. But you know better. The war does not bend to the will of men. It is indifferent to promises, deaf to prayers, and blind to the dreams of those caught in its grasp. Tomorrow will come with the roar of cannons and the thunder of marching boots. It will bring chaos and pain and the terrifying uncertainty of who will live to see another day. You will rise before dawn, shivering but resolute, stepping once more into the fray that has become your existence. And still, in the cold silence of the night, you hold on to a fragile flame, a whisper of hope that refuses to die. Against the endless tide of smoke and death, you cling to the dream of home, to the memory of a life before the war tore everything apart. You sit alone now, the fire's last glow flickering weakly, and wonder if the promise of 1 more week is truth or just another lie told to keep men marching forward. The silence presses in, heavy and suffocating, but within it, that small flame of hope still flickers, stubborn and defiant, lighting your path through the darkness. The biting cold of the evening creeps through every thread of your worn coat, settling deep into your bones, stubborn and unrelenting. Your fingers, stiff and trembling from the chill and exhaustion, clutch a piece of rough, weathered paper, the only canvas you have left to spill your soul. You lean over a makeshift desk, a splintered wooden crate, scarred by months of relentless war, worn smooth in places from use and neglect alike. The flickering candlelight throws uncertain shadows that dance across the page, like fleeting spirits from a life you once knew, a world that seems so far away now. Tonight, you write, not for yourself, but for someone who is far away, someone whose voice is lost amid the thunderous roar of cannons and the suffocating silence that follows. Someone who will never receive this letter. You dip your quill into the inkwell, watching the dark, viscous ink cling stubbornly to the tip, mirroring the heaviness that presses on your chest. Your thoughts struggle to form coherent words, each one burdened by the weight of memories, fear, and sorrow that refuse to be silenced. You write of a boy, young, untested, innocent, whose life was meant to be full of promise and peace, but was stolen away too soon by the cruel hand of war. You write of dreams shattered like fragile glass beneath the relentless storm, of laughter drowned beneath the roar of artillery fire, of love and hope that may never be returned. As your pen scratches against the coarse paper, memories flood your mind in relentless waves. The rare moments of laughter shared before the battles, the comforting warmth of the sun that no longer seems to reach you, the faces of comrades lost to the cold embrace of death. Each word you write becomes a vessel carrying not only your grief but the silent prayers of countless others who will never have the chance to say goodbye or find peace. You write as if time still belongs to you, that this war might end, that this letter could somehow cross battlefields and broken lines to reach a distant hand and bring solace, a whisper of peace amid the chaos. But deep down, a cold truth gnaws at your heart. This letter will never be sent. It is a confession, a testament, a flicker of fragile hope clinging to a world slipping ever further away. It is your desperate attempt to hold on to what remains of your humanity when all else threatens to crumble into dust. The candle burns lower, its flickering light fighting shadows that seem to creep ever closer. Your hand falters, ink smudges where trembling fingers betray you, but you press on. Every word is an act of quiet rebellion against the despair clawing at your mind, a whispered defiance against the darkness encroaching on your soul. You write because to stop would mean surrender, and surrender is a luxury you cannot afford here, not now. When finally the letter is complete, you fold it carefully, pressing it to your chest as if to keep the fragile future it represents close, an unspoken farewell to a life that will never be, a silent vow to remember even when hope feels like a distant dream. You tuck it away in your pack, knowing with bitter certainty it will never be sent, that it will remain a silent witness to your pain, your love, and your stubborn hope intertwined. Outside, the distant thunder of artillery rumbles through the night, a cruel reminder that this war is indifferent to your words, your dreams, and your silent letters. But in this stolen moment of quiet, you find a small sliver of peace. You have spoken what needed to be said, even if no one ever hears it. And in that fragile act, perhaps, there is still some small salvation. The cold dawn breaks slowly over the shattered landscape, but it brings no comfort. Your body aches from days, no weeks, of ceaseless marching, each step a relentless hammer against your battered spirit. The mud clings to your boots, heavy and cold, a stubborn reminder that the road stretches endlessly ahead. Around you, the world is a tapestry of broken trees, scorched earth, and the silent ruins of homes long abandoned. The air tastes of smoke and sorrow, and every breath feels thick with the weight of all that has been lost. You rise from your restless sleep on the hard ground, muscles stiff and joints screaming in protest. The morning chill bites through your threadbare coat, seeping into your bones, but still you move. The march begins again, a slow, grinding rhythm that carries you forward whether your body wishes it or not. Your legs carry scars from the unforgiving terrain. Your feet bleed beneath worn boots, but your heart clenches tighter with every step. You are tired beyond measure, but surrender is a luxury you cannot afford. Around you, the faces of your comrades are etched with exhaustion and despair. Eyes that once held fire now mirror the gray sky above, empty. Distant, yet somehow still determined. You see the ghosts of those who have fallen, their absence a hollow ache in the ranks. Each lost friend is a shadow that follows, a silent companion on this endless march through desolation. The road offers no promises, no respite, only the unyielding call to move forward. You walk not just for yourself but for those who can no longer walk, who will never see the dawn again. Each step is a testament to their memory, a defiant refusal to let their sacrifice be forgotten. The journey is brutal. The cold winds whip against your face, the biting rain soaks through your clothes, and hunger gnaws relentlessly at your insides. Yet somehow you press on. Because stopping means death, not just of the body, but of hope itself. Inside, a small spark flickers, a stubborn ember of resilience that refuses to be extinguished by the horrors surrounding you. You clutch onto that ember, letting it fuel your will to survive, to endure, to one day see peace bloom from this barren ground. You dream of a future beyond the endless march, a life where the sounds of gunfire are replaced by laughter, where the skies are clear, and where the heavy weight of loss is lifted, if only for a moment. The war has stolen so much, time, youth, friends, and innocence, but it has not claimed your soul. You are more than the battlefield, more than the mud and blood. You are the memory of those who cannot speak, the strength that refuses to yield. And so you march on. The journey is far from over. The night will come again, and with it the uncertainty and fear, but you will rise, and you will keep moving forward. Thank you for walking this path with me through the echoes of history, through the voices of those who lived and died in silence. If this story touched you, if it stirred something deep inside, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support keeps these memories alive, honoring the sacrifices and stories that time might otherwise forget. Until next time, stay strong, stay thoughtful, and remember, every step forward, no matter how weary, is a victory in itself. Good night, and thank you for being here.